Our next guest is a Melbourne performer who's made a name for herself in such diverse fields as theatre, burlesque, stand-up, poetry, and improv. She has devised and performed in her own solo shows, including Asexual Healing, The Lazy Show, and The Wasp Movie. She has performed in numerous improv conspiracy shows over the years and was a prize winner in the 2019 Midsummer Queer Poetry Slam. Nikki Viveca, welcome to Offbeat. You've performed improv, spoken word, poetry, and burlesque, to name it just a few styles. What inspired you to perform and cast in such a wide net?
When I started performing, I started really enjoying the possibilities in different forms. And I think the reason why I keep hopping from form to form is that you find there's some things which don't work in one form, which work so much better in another. Or there's some things which do translate from one to another, but it brings out a different thing when you do something that, say, I wrote as a stand-up bit, I then do as a poem, for instance. It brings a different thing out of the same kind of content. But it was improv that really got me performing regularly. The constant performance, learning by performing all the time.
Yeah.
By taking as many risks as you want, doing as many, trying all sorts of stuff. I did some bad improv as well. I've done some terrible improv, but that's part of it. That part of it is terrible and part of it's amazing. And the audience love watching it, whether you fail or succeed. And I really love the immediacy of improv as well, that something could be happening in the world and you could get up on stage and do a bit about it that night. And it's completely disposable because of the whole improv mindset. Seriously, improv's it's a bit of a cult. You get into it and you're like, improv for life, improv rules for everything. I'm going to improvise my whole life. All life is improv, isn't it? And you get really super into it, but it makes you quite, it makes you quite confident to start trying things.
Yeah.
As long as sitting worrying, do I have this joke right? You're just like, I'll just try this. We'll see where it goes. And if that fails, my scene partner will get me out of it. We'll work our way out of it.
As someone with such a diverse range of performance styles, can you describe how your relationship with the audience evolves in each form?
That's an interesting one. I think possibly my favourite one for audience interaction is stand-up. Because that one you have a very direct connection. With stand-up, because you're there talking, I'm usually talking about very personal stuff. Yeah. So it's usually very personal material. But so I've got the bit that I'm wanting to say, which is important to me, but my main goal is also to make the audience really enjoy it and to really laugh. And so the whole time you're doing stand-up, you're seeing how the audience are reacting, you're clocking which jokes they like, what sort of jokes they like, what sort of pacing they like, what sort of things they enjoy. And you change what you do and how you present it. And so sometimes the material will change a bit every night. It's the audience aren't going for those sort of jokes, so I'll lean away from them.
Oh, righty, yeah.
When I came to Melbourne, the theatre scene is very good, the music scene is very good if you're into going to gigs and stuff like that. Poetry was around, but it's a little bit underground. It took me a while to find that spoken word scene, and it seems to be much bigger now. There's a lot of stand-up, but it wasn't as diverse back in the day when I first arrived. And it's gradually got better and better.
Has lockdown had any unexpected positive aspects on you as a creator?
In different ways than what I thought it would. And in very different ways. Because when it happened, I was in a very good place mentally at the start of lockdown. I'd just been to the Seven Sisters Festival, the women's festival out in the bush. I'd done a whole bunch of feelings. Yeah. And that's when we got the news that things are all getting shut down. And so we're all out in the bush being like, we need to bring back our energy. We need to bring back this spirit back to the world. Quite confident at the beginning of lockdown that, about what I wanted to do. And I was all into the idea of I'll do the pivot. I'll do the pivot to video and I'll make sure I make this nice, sort of calming, encouraging, positive video works. And I'll be but had all these great dreams. And of course, within a few weeks of lockdown, it's just constant internal screaming and you don't do any of that. But I did a lot of really internal soul-searching kind of poetry. And I write poetry on themes which I've never touched on before.
Wow.
And so I took poetry to very different spaces.
Yeah.
Of course, like during isolation, nobody was really that in the mood for comedy. Everybody wanted the pain stuff. And that's all I wanted to write. And it's mostly what people were responding to. People wanted to do that soul-searching stuff. And so I did less of that pulling away from that type of writing. And so I've written a lot of poems, which I'm very, I've gone to different spaces, which I'm quite proud of. The projects that have happened during lockdown, I'd say, like, of all the arts projects we put up trying to make, most of them haven't been able to go ahead, or it was just too hard to do, from home without anyone else around. I found that they are very, like, sort of in touch with the spirit of the time. Like, they really speak to the spirit of the time in some way.
Wow.
And you find yourself expressing things. It's sort of hard to know what's going to happen next.
It is, isn't it?
I do feel kind of fortunate that I do have so many arts. That's been one of the good things. Is I have been able to roll with what the situation is kind of demanding of me in some ways. If I'd just been doing improv and stand-up, I'd be pretty sad at the moment, because that's been so hard to do. I found that poetry and burlesque both work. You can really adjust them to the camera. With the poetry, you can really sort of direct it at the audience, even if you are just on camera. And burlesque film has its own history. It's different rules and style things differently, but you can really play with the visual element of it. I actually, like, in the break between lockdowns, I did 2 plays. Can you believe?
Oh, righty, yeah.
And one was like a verbatim theatre piece about rural queer experiences.
Wow, yeah.
So that was a very again, like, it was, very sort of in the spirit ones, because that's a very isolating experience.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And so talking about that and, talking about those kind of experiences felt very appropriate to the time. I know, like, because I grew up in regional Queensland and we were aware of queer people. We saw queer people on the TV, but you didn't think that you could be one.
No.
Not from Toowoomba, South East Queensland.
Right.
No queer there. So that show's a very, very important one to me. It's called Thrive. I should mention the show.
Thrive. Perfect.
So it is one that I hope that we are able to tour to lots of places.
Definitely.
Because seeing something like that when I was a kid would be amazing.
Last year, you co-created ACEtravaganza, an evening of asexual performance, story and song, possibly the first of its kind anywhere in the world. How did that come about?
Maybe.
What was, are you?
Maybe it is. I've never, I haven't seen any before then. That has actually, this is so funny. We created, me and Artemis Munoz created our show ACEtravaganza as a direct response to Midsummer not having any, like, a lot of ace representation. For some reason, I've been doing ace shows for years. Both of us have been doing shows about it for a while, but neither of us had done one at Midsummer for some reason. And then we were starting to see some shows were mentioning asexuality, but they weren't made by ace people. And we're like, no, there needs to be a by ace for ace show. We want to have a show where all of us can come and we can get as many of the people from the ace community as we can on stage. So it was a really beautiful experience, and I don't think I hadn't seen any other shows like it. So what other shows do you have coming up? I think you touched on it a bit earlier. Got some so it's kind of hard to talk about at the moment because we don't know.
It's so up in the air, isn't it?
We don't know, and there are some publicity embargoes as well. But COVID willing, if things open up, we will be bringing Thrive back, the verbatim theatre piece I mentioned, the rural queer.
Yes.
Right? The big cabaret show performing, the transgender cabaret spectacular gender euphoria, and it's a little hush up at the moment, but we are bringing ACEtravaganza back.
Beautiful.
We're planning to relaunch ACEtravaganza sometime soon, and we've got very exciting plans for that. Any asexual artist watching
get
this,
involved.
if you're like, hey, that's me, I'm Ace, I'm an artist, I want to be in a show, drop me a line at Nikki Viveca on Instagram.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for talking with me today.